So good morning, everybody. We are back again for another episode of Environmental Social Justice. I bring to you Miss Joy Langford, our environmental consultant. Good
Hey,
morning.
everybody. How's it going?
We are well. And Joel Vendette, our in-house realtor and renewable energy guy. How are you doing, Joel?
Doing well. How are you? Good morning.
Well, so we had a lot to talk about. We had sort of a pre-conversation before we went live talking, about everything that's going on in the world, housing issues, job issues, everything's happening with renewable energy, the green economy. But I do want to give an initial shout out to some of these awesome people that we have had follow us and share our videos.
Yay!
I am truly grateful. I mean, a couple of guys like Steve Ivy, who is with Grid Energy Storage in Bonham, Texas. This guy has a new invention that he shared with me. It's brilliant. It's a great idea. I'm not going to give it away, but Steve Ivy in Bonham, Texas of Grid Energy Storage. He loves all of our videos. He's a huge fan of Joy and Joel. He actually, I think, reached out to you, Joel. I think you guys connected, or I connected you with
we're on LinkedIn together. Yeah, we linked in.
Everyone's on LinkedIn. I mean, this is amazing. And then Gautam Bashki, he is out of Canada. So this is a dude I met, I LinkedIn, talking in Canada. He gave us the best compliment ever. He's a finance guy. He's an economist, like way smarter than I'll ever be. And he said, he's getting into the ESG world. And he said, when I try to explain to my friends what I'm doing, I just send them your videos.
That's awesome.
Is that not the best compliment you could ever get from somebody? I mean, when he said that, I almost fell out of my chair. I'm like, that is just the coolest thing. And, there are a bunch of other people. I'm not going to spend too much time, but I think from now on, when we do our intros, we're just going to thank more and more people that follow us. And of course, my mother-in-law, Patty, watches every single episode. So I got to give a shout out. Patty rules.
And this just goes along with the goal of what we had when we first started this, right? Yeah. We're non-judgmental. We just want to present ideas as it relates to environmental and social justice and see where it leads us.
Exactly. I mean, open to any, as long as you're nice. You got to be nice. We're not going to have someone, dragging us around. As long as you have a question, or if you disagree with us, awesome. Tell me where the data came from. I'm not going to go with because, someone told me on Facebook. We're data people. And Joel, we were talking, going back to our previous conversation, Joel, the housing market, so much of what to expect in the coming months. So please share with the world what your research has shown you.
Well, so actually what we're talking about, which was fascinating to me, is an article that just came out in the LA Times this morning, which I'm posting in the chat right now, which everybody should really take a moment to read. I'm sorry?
There it is.
Oh, yes. It's actually kind of a wake-up call, I think, for all of us to realize what we're facing based on the pandemic that we're in right now and appears to be in for a long time coming. It's kind of a harrowing tale about what people are facing as far as now and the future. There was one quote in there which said a family that's making around $30,000 a year is going to be living on the brink of homelessness for the next 10 to 15 years based on this. This is terrifying to me. And I think we all know people who are struggling right now. We all know businesses that are struggling right now. But I don't think we've actually been looking at the homeless side of it, or the housing issues that we have, and where this is leading us, possibly leading us to. And it's gut-wrenching to see. I mean, everybody needs to read this article. It's a huge eye-opener. I mean, they're talking about, people are upping their student loans to try to pay for rent and buy food. People have dipped into their 401ks, or they have completely wiped out their savings, and they are just literally trying to survive right now because we have no jobs. Housing is too expensive. I mean, there was another article in LA Times a couple weeks ago that there was a homeless shelter that was built in downtown LA, and they did it out of shipping containers, and it happened at a breakneck pace. And these are actually kind of like mini studio apartments. And I'm like, okay, we have the technology and the ingenuity to move forward. Do we need to build everything luxury? Can we just go back to the basics of just giving people roofs over their head that are nice and safe and secure? But with the whole
initial housing cost, like the initial land acquisition is.
Well, that I think was probably city land. So it was downtown. So they probably had that, but it's still, they were able to get the land and build something. I think it was done within a year or so. I'm like, and it's going to house a ton of people, but I'm just terrified for what we're facing. I don't know if we're actually I don't know if we're addressing the issues that need to happen, because, yes, people don't have the money to pay rent, which means mortgages are falling apart, which means homeowners can't pay their mortgages, but they also can't pay their property taxes, which go towards the city services. And it is a huge snowball. I'm sorry?
Then you get a lien if you don't pay your property tax.
Exactly. And so it's just like, then you
Or
got the mortgage
foreclosure. Yeah.
And you got the mortgage forbearance issue, which is, or the rental moratorium and all that, but people still have to pay this back. And then there's the programs where the government, if a landlord will sign up for it, I think they can get 80% paid back to them if they're willing to forgive the other 20%, but people have to willingly sign up for it. This whole thing is a cluster, and this article was a huge wake-up call for what I think we could be facing very soon. It's terrifying.
Any advice?
And it comes down to like the chicken and egg, right? Like or the cart before the horse. What are we going to try to fix first? And I think that the logical solution would be to work on the economy. And working on the economy as an environmental person, to me, would be to go back to sharpening what Biden is attempting to do. I mean, the goals are really lofty in some of his plans and his executive orders, but we've got to get people back in the work mode before we can handle the rest of this stuff. I don't know what you think, Joel, but
I think before we can even get to that point, we have to get the pandemic under control. And I was very encouraged to see that they're going to start doing shipments, very low shipments, but they're going to start going straight out to pharmacies.
Yes.
And that, I believe, is starting in the next week or so. So I don't know where that's going. I don't know how you sign up for it. I have none of that information, but please, everybody, research it. So I think until we can get that under control, you can't even touch the economy, because people can't go back to work. I mean, look at what happened down in Long Beach. There's two grocery stores are closing because they don't want to pay the $4 hazard pay. And $4 an hour hazard pay. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Well, I mean, I read the whole article on that, and they did cite that it was underperforming for years. I mean, I know that's a whole other discussion about what Kroger's really doing, but that location had been slated for closure for some time. And again, this is me just playing neutral, saying all sides.
Yeah.
And is it right? No, it's completely wrong. I mean, especially now. Don't close it now. You floated it.
Don't close a grocery store right now. Don't take jobs away. I mean, it's like this is going to have.
Don't take the food source away.
That's just it. I mean, it's not just about, it's everything that goes with that. It's just like, you can't take food away from people and pay them what they're worth. I mean, we were talking about this on last week's episode with the $15 an hour minimum wage. Live in LA and try to live on $15 an hour. Live in a city, live anywhere right now and try to live on $15 an hour when you're trying to pay for your car insurance, you're trying to pay for your rent or your mortgage, you got to pay for your health insurance, you have to pay for all this. Plus, if you have kids, you got to put them in school, you have to you're feeding them, you want to clothe them, you want to take. I don't know how we've allowed this to become such a society based on the have versus have not. The middle class is being obliterated before our very eyes, and I think we all know this. It's just, I don't know how we fix this. I really don't.
Well, in a lot of countries, or not countries, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. Many corporations that are focused on ESG, sustainability, putting people over profit, they have actually adopted the rule where, the executive cannot make, they cannot make more than 7 times more money than their lowest paid employee, 7 or 9 or something like that. Yeah. So they keep it kind of in the middle. And there was a man who cut his salary by millions just so he could pay everybody a minimum wage of $70,000. And everyone laughed at him and said it would never work, and it's thriving.
There was a company years ago that sold itself, and I remember the owners, because they were, I don't remember the company, this was at least 10 years ago, I believe. They sold the company, and the owners actually gifted every single employee their salary as a bonus to just say, we could not have done this without you. Yeah. Thank you. And it's like those stories, unfortunately, they may happen more often than we're aware of, but it feels very few and far between because we don't hear of them.
And it's going to be fewer and farther in between as people try to, or companies try to meet their, expectations either on the stock market or otherwise. Those are great things to hope and wish for. And if I was an employee working at one of these companies, I'd be praying to the creator to provide me with something like that. But the realistic part is what Joel is saying, that the majority of people are going to go without. There's going to be even more homelessness.
We will see that happen, yeah.
And we don't know we don't have a steady source of where job creation is going to come from. Even with the initiatives that are coming out right now, you know, environmental initiatives, who's to say people are actually going to take that? Just like who's to say they're going to take the vaccine? There's just a lot of ifs as to what people are going to do.
But I want to say something. Sorry, really quick. I know before we go into the vaccine thing, I just want to address, like, I have no issue with people making money. I'm not trying to say that at all. And so I don't want it to be construed that way. I think if you're working hard, you deserve to have the opportunities to make money and go further ahead. I just think we need to figure out some way that we don't just keep seeing this division amongst people, because it just feels like we've gotten to a point where it's like, if you don't have it, you're just trying to get by and you get further and further behind. And if you have, you just keep getting further and further. And the gap between, like I said, if you're making money hand over fist, more power to you, you've done something right. How do we get everybody on the same playing field to give them the opportunities? That's all.
I agree. And that's the definition of the social justice aspect, is everybody should be given a fair chance and work hard, get a reward. I have no patience for, my dad called me out on this when I was like 15 or 16. And he said, you have no patience for stupid or lazy. And I don't.
That's why we're friends.
And it's caused a lot of strife in my working career, let me tell you, because when I have someone that, because I was that workaholic, you know, I drove myself into the dirt. But when I saw someone that was not even trying or not even pushing themselves, I would get very, very irritated, and unfortunately made that visible because, you know, some people just coast through the day and not do anything. And I'm like, you know, and don't bitch about not being successful. You got to push, you got to keep fighting, you got to keep working, and you got to do what other people don't want to do. I mean, Jeff Bezos, great. He started an online book selling company. Awesome. It turned into something huge. Awesome. Should he have a couple $1 billion? Maybe not, but.
But you know that, Wendy, that brings up a good point too. Like I'm sitting here while you're talking, thinking about dirty jobs, right? Yes. And I'm thinking to myself, people would not do half of the stuff that I've done in environmental to make a living. Yeah, I actually know how the sausage is made. I actually know what happens to organics and meat products after, you know, they've, you know, been slaughtered. You know, the things that I do to make $1, a lot of people would not do.
My first job as an environmental consultant that was rooting through basements that were disgusting. I had to deal with some very scary people. I had to do a site assessment through a warehouse where homeless people were. They sent me alone at 22 years old in Worcester, Massachusetts, in this rabbit warren of a warehouse. And I could hear the homeless people running. And I'm there. There's no light, no electricity. This is an abandoned warehouse. And I'm with a flashlight. And I'm thinking, I ran through that thing. And then I got yelled at for not doing a good job. I'm like, dude, this was dangerous. And I've also I almost blew myself up. We were drilling and Boston Gas marked the wrong lines. And we drilled through a 12-inch high pressure gas main. So it could have very easily blown up. And that was in Watertown, Massachusetts, like 20 years ago. And I just remember thinking, I've done some really crazy stuff, and I like desk jobs.
Right. But see, those are the kind of jobs that we could train people for, that can go out and do these type of jobs. They're not glamorous. They're not sexy. They're not anything, you know, you'd see Kim Kardashian or one of the social media influencers do, but yet they are good livings. They provide for your housing. You know, you can live the type of lifestyle that you want and help your family as well. And I think those are the types of things that should be promoted out here, especially with new green energy policy or elsewhere.
And there's a lot of great policy coming.
There is, and before the COVID lockdown, with what I envisioned us to do for this environmental social justice show, is I wanted us to do field trips. I wanted us to go out in the field. I'm fine with getting dirty and going through trenches and stuff. I just don't want to go through empty warehouses alone anymore. And I would really like to not blow up. That's a strong goal of mine now.
Just get on MacGyver on it. Take a paper clip, fix it, done.
That blow up story is a whole. That's another day. That was a terrifying day for me. But once we get out of lockdown, hopefully we can go out together, film some of these projects going on, because I think people need a firsthand view of what's happening. What does a wind turbine look like getting installed? What does a solar panel look like getting installed? Some of these, what Pavitra, who was on a few weeks ago with her deep root system, Silva cells, what does that look like? We can talk about it all we want, but let's show people what it looks like and how cool it is.
Yeah.
That's like, yeah, whatever.
I'm like, yeah, that's kind of it right there. Don't know what to say to that. Yeah.
No. So
going back to the jobs thing. So I know, Joy, that was actually one thing that you said you had done some research on, and we were talking about all the new initiatives and what this could potentially mean to hopefully get people back to work once we can get the vaccine and people can start getting vaccinated. And hopefully in the next year. I hate saying that that's going to be this long, but the reality is we have a very long time to go because of the rollout of the vaccine. As much as they're trying to go faster, it's kind of an uphill battle right now to go from nothing to 1,000 miles an hour.
Exactly. I mean, look, you've got all of these big non-consequential numbers being thrown at you, right? Especially in the last month. Since the new administration has come into play. You've got $400 billion over the next 10 years that the administration is committing to clean energy. I mean, it sounds really nice, but how is that going to trickle down to the normal, average, everyday person? All zero emission vehicles by 2050. I don't know how many people you're going to, I
was just talking about this, the lease rates for cars that you're looking at, Joel. It's impossible.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm hoping that as the technology gets better, I mean, right now it's a supply and demand issue because the demand is a lot bigger than the supply because we also have a very limited supply chain of electric vehicles. So it's like you go online, you look them up, you're looking at if you want to lease. So you're saying $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 down payment minimum. And then you've got to probably do close to $500, $600, $700 a month to lease the car. And I'm like, I don't know how people are going to pay for that. Like, I just don't know. I mean, especially going back to what we were talking about before, they're unemployed. We have no jobs. People are worrying about buying food and paying for the rent. And this, like, if this is a 10 to 15 year recovery that we're looking at, by 2035, I think California is supposed to be only electric cars being sold. How are we going to get to that point if people aren't working and can't eat?
We desperately need car prices going down. I mean, that's in the write-up for this particular show, I talked about cutting the Biden signing the order about cutting the subsidies to oil companies. And that's awesome from a green standpoint. They shouldn't be getting government payout for producing oil. I get it. But I honestly think it's going to jack up oil prices. I think that all of that's going to be passed along to the consumer.
Of course it is.
It's an immediate punishment to make things worse to an already stressed economical situation.
And one of the things too, having 2 oil refineries in the district that I work in, we try to hit the refinery thing with kid gloves. These refineries are employing thousands upon thousands of people at higher wages than any grocery store. You can have a conviction on your record. You can, it's the pay is allowing people to actually buy homes, to live the American dream, to be able to afford electrical vehicle type cars, even though, they're going to be company men and they're going to keep driving petrol for, as long as they possibly can. But, the point being that we have to also, and I hope that the administration is thinking about that too, approach these things with kid gloves. You can't put all of the people in a refinery, out of business. And I know that the people that are neighbors want to go out of business because of the flares and the smells and, the sickness that could be attributed to that. But, that's kind of a fine line as well. So.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it needs to be phased out, not completely shut off. There are too many employees that work in the petroleum industry. You cannot just cut them out of their job. You can't kill their industry. But that being said, Shell and British Petroleum are doing an amazing job with renewable energy. And Exxon, I think Exxon just pledged what was it, $1 billion or some crazy amount of money to study renewables and to work into that. So, they're a little late to the game, but, they're pledging a significant amount of money. So there is positivity.
Well, that's it. I think companies are waking up to the fact that you have no choice. You literally have no choice.
Yeah.
I mean, what is it? I think Chevy announced that they're going to go all electric. So, I mean, I think that's by 2050 or 2035, something like that. They're going to go fully electric vehicles. I mean, the demand for what's happening in the world, it's showing that these companies, you have no choice. If you want to survive, you're going to have to transfer over. As far as the people working in refineries and all this, there are so many social issues with that one. I mean, I'm not even going to get started on that subject because it is such a deeper issue than just the jobs. It's the locations of where they're at, the communities that they're located within.
I'm glad you brought that up. Talk about relocating. That's going to be huge.
Yeah, I'm these are bigger issues because not that, but then so you got the refineries. What have they done to the land around there, as well as the people living there? And it's just you have to look at the neighborhoods that they're placed in. Just saying, I don't see a refinery in Brentwood. I don't see a refinery up in, Mission Hills in San Francisco. I don't see a refinery in certain neighborhoods. So
we all know.
It's such a layered conversation or issue rather.
Yeah. I mean, Joy and I did a tour. We drove around El Segundo last summer. Was it last? No, it was over a year ago.
Yeah, a little bit over a year ago. Yeah.
Yeah. And we just kind of drove by the refinery out there in the neighborhood. Yeah. But El Segundo, which is an adorable little town. I mean, I have to say, driving through that, it's really cute. Yeah. That's a company town. They love their oil company. Do they get subsidized? Do they get money from the refinery for living there? I don't know.
I'm not sure about that, but I know that the pay is very good over there. I actually, quick story. I used to have a boyfriend when I was in high school. He was a little bit older than me. He was going to medical school, and he actually was able to graduate from medical school while working full time at Chevron. That pay was so good. It was like $80,000 back then, and they let him, go to school, and he figured out his hours, and so I don't have too much against the type of pay that they give.
That's what we need to do for the renewables.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And I just said, and no, I'm sorry, I'm talking too much. I've had a lot of caffeine, but nobody is saying to get rid of these industries at all. It is just a matter of, it's kind of like everything in life. You have to find a balance between what we've been doing and how we're going to go to the future, because we're not going to get rid of fossil fuels. We're not going to ever get rid of these things, more than likely, not in our lifetime. So how do we figure out this balance where we can start transferring things over while still letting people have a job that's going to get them through medical school, and not decimate these neighborhoods and these communities that are founded, that are based upon these industries. So it's early.
Well, again, phasing things out. I mean, you can't just shut something down and expect it to work. And it is, I mean, at least the oil companies are addressing it. Most of them are no longer looking for new places to drill. They're now focusing on the renewable world. I love the fact that hydrogen is becoming more popular, and now we figured out green hydrogen. And I love the fact that they're, Fisker's doing, is it Fisker that does the solar paneled car? Joel, you're a fan of Fisker.
Yeah, their car's not coming out until 2022. They're the ones I'm excited for, because their car lease is
car too.
The new the Ocean SUV is freaking beautiful, but it's also based upon the carpeting is based recycled fishing that's taken from the ocean, vegan leather throughout. They're actually using recyclable materials in the cars. And then I was watching this video presentation on it. Their plan is, so you're going to be able to do the leases. But then once your lease is up, they'll take the car back and they're going to refurbish it, and then they're going to bring them back out at a lower price point for people to buy them or release them. So they've kind of got a different mindset from all these other car companies. But everybody needs to check out this car. I'm in love with this thing. But their leases are actually going to be under $400 a month.
No way.
Their starting price points are going to be below $40,000 to purchase a car, and then you've got the tax credits on that. So there's a good chance that they're going to hit $30,000 and under for a starting point for an electric car that's supposed to go at least 300 miles on a charge. I'm like, I'm super excited for this car.
One charge? I don't know anyone else that's able to do that yet.
Tesla can, but you're gonna upgrade to it. So all the other car manufacturers do offer upgrades to 300, but I believe theirs is going to be starting at right around a 300-mile charge. I'm super excited to see this car. I'm hoping it comes together. It's not supposed to be delivered until next year. I believe it's 2022 is when they start. So
it's both solar and battery?
They're going to be plug-in, and then the roof is actually, I think it's a fixed panoramic sunroof that also does solar charging.
Wow.
I'm like, this guy's like pushing the boundaries on this car, and it's right here in California. So it's going to be pretty awesome.
Please stay.
I think they're based in Manhattan Beach, actually. So I'm hoping, the last Fisker didn't do as well, but this one actually looks like it's going to have the potential to do something awesome.
I think they didn't do as well because I think they were ahead of their time with a solar paneled roof.
They had a lot of issues, I believe, from the beginning. Like if you go back and look at the first Fisker car from a few years ago, was one of the most beautiful cars that was ever going to hit the road. I fell in love with that thing, but it was also going to be over $100,000, and it was just a plug-in hybrid. So
it was bad cash management too. They were getting the investors that they needed. If I remember this story correctly, they just had bad cash management.
And I think they had supply issues. They had building issues. I mean, it was just kind of like everything that could go wrong did go wrong. But this one, I am too, because like I'm head over heels in love with this car, and I want one so badly.
I hadn't even heard of it until you told me about the first one, which was like 10 years ago or more. And you brought it up, and I Googled it because I'm like, I don't know what a Fisker is. And it was just a pretty car.
It was. And he designed like iconic cars, like for BMW and Audi and all the high-end luxury brands. That's what he did as a living. He was a car designer. And so this guy's, I just hope that this company comes together, because I think what they're trying to do is going to be a game changer for the electric vehicle industry. Because right now you're seeing like Lucid and Tesla and all these cars, and everything's being marketed as a luxury brand. And this one is actually going to be, no, this is a real car for real people.
Which is what we need.
And it's sustainable. That's the part that kills me. It's like vegan leather interior, recyclable materials. I think there's cork somewhere being used. I mean, it's pretty freaking cool what they're creating.
Full circular economy on that.
Yeah.
What more do you love?
Awesome.
Well, now I want to go to Manhattan Beach and stalk them.
I'm super enamored with this vehicle.
You said 2022 is when they launch, when they release?
I think so. I think that's when they're going to start coming out. They've already gotten like over 10,000 reservations for the vehicle already. Oh. So yeah, I mean, I think they're going to I'm hopeful that they will do well this time.
Oh, that's awesome. I guess we've actually gone over by 8 minutes technically, but whoopsies. Maybe we should just extend this to 30 minutes now, because we just babble.
This was a good chat. And I had a lot of caffeine, so I apologize.
Yeah, I've had about half a pot myself, but it takes much more than that for me. I'm definitely a caffeine junkie, but thank you guys. And next week, extraordinarily excited for Farouk Elbaz. So if you don't know who Farouk Elbaz is, he's a legend in the geology world, remote sensing world, energy world. He's an Egyptian geologist. If you want to know about him, he has his own Wikipedia page. And Tom Hanks and Ron Howard, in their documentary From the Earth to the Moon, there is a chapter called The Brain of Farouk Elbaz, or Farouk's Brain, or something to that effect. So the man has a chapter in a documentary done by Tom Hanks and Ron Howard. So he's my favorite person in the world. I've known the man for years. So
no offense.
Nice. But no, I'm a huge fan of his. I've known him for years, and he was one of the very first people I ever spoke to about renewable energy, where he told me probably in early 2000s about airplanes with solar paneled airplanes, to which I replied, absolutely no way would I get on that, because
now you're thinking twice.
Now I'm thinking
now you
twice.
Just want to get on a plane.
Yeah, well, that's true too.
Right,
But, you know, talking about solar panels that you could unroll like wallpaper, that's stuff that he was privy to back, 20 years ago. So God only knows what he knows now. I'm going to pick his brain. So for the brain. So on that, thank you guys. Wonderful day. And I will see you all next week.
Bye.
Bye.